Hey everyone, I'm Chad Stewart. I'm a software engineer from Kingston, Jamaica, and I want to talk about a topic that, first of all, is fairly new to me, and I don't see a lot of people talking about. And now it's gonna sound really weird when you hear what the topic is. Is like you didn't know anything about this. What are you talking about? But I feel like the reason for that is because as software engineers, intrinsically we do this and it's really easy. So, or it's significantly easier than in other industries, and so it's something we don't talk about. That might not be true. It's just kind of like what I see, or it's kind of like my perception of. I've been using the word perception way too much, but it's kind of like my perception of the industry, and it's adding value as a software engineer. Um, like it's kind of new to me because I always thought of adding value as um, as just writing code and making stuff and building stuff. I never thought of adding value as a whole open-ended thing. Anyways, I kind of wanted to talk about this. So, like I said, the topic is fairly new to me, and this video is my attempt in exploring it. I've been kind of trying to add like the thought process kind of more into my life. And I wanted to talk about it in case other people were interested as well. So I have some notes here about things that I want to talk about. And yeah, give me a sec. I have a definition here. Yes, right. So you can't see what I'm doing because I'm not recording my screen, but I have a definition here. So a definition is for value. So what is value, right? And I have a definition for value here. And the definition, according to Google search, is the regard that something is held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. I mostly agree with that definition, but something that I wanted to add to that definition is I feel like all of that is based on a specific person's perception. That's where, as I was thinking about it, that's where the whole thing about me seeing perception so much comes from. Is it depends on the person you ask, right? So I'll give a quick example. I like video games. I really, really like video games. So if you were to hand me a video game and say, hey, do you want to try this new video game? I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it. I have a high value. I put a high value on video games. Whereas you take that same video game, or you take a video game. It may not even necessarily matter the video game, but you hand it to somebody who does not like video games at all. They'll be like, no, I don't like video games. I'm not interested, right? And I think the point I'm making here is that it's really important that you understand that it depends on the person viewing it. Like value is subjective. Value goes through the lens of the person making the value judgment. You know, and so as you're thinking about value and how to add value to yourself, you want to think about the audience, right? So the second thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that, and it kind of goes off the conversation that I was having, or the conversation, the what I was just saying is that if value is driven by a person's perception of it, or yeah, a person's perception of it, then that makes me feel like value is an extremely fluid thing. Like value changes based on how people see a thing, right? So value is like a property. Like if we were to go with coding, value is a property on an object, and that property changes whenever something analyzes it, right? So my view on value of the value of something will may change over time, but definitely my view of value may be different from somebody else's view of value. The how I value something may change, or how I value something may change over time, but how I value something may be different from how somebody else values something, and that makes value fluid, right? And I think that's a very powerful thing to think about, to think value to think about value as something very fluid. um so I think there's two components of value, and it kind of goes into the third thing I want to talk about. I think there's two components of value, or there's two things that are needed for value. You need the thing itself, you need the thing that's being judged, and then you need somebody to judge the thing, right? And then what I would say value is that connection, right? So in thinking about this stuff, I kind of came to the conclusion that value can also be negative. It can be, you can have negative value. So like that connection may not necessarily always be positive. We always think of value as positive, right? Like value, the word is always associated with something positive. But you can have, there's no reason why you can't have negative value, right? So your goal is to have a thing or have a group of people, and then get them to have a positive perception of something, right? And that positive perception is that connection itself is value, right? Or is its perceived value? I guess going with perception, it's its perceived value, right? And so going again, that goes into my well, not again, that goes into my third point. It goes into my third point. Choose something that you want to make valuable, right? Because the components of value, in my opinion, I should state, the components of value is made up of the thing being judged, and then the person that does the judging. It's important that you choose something that you want to make valuable, right? And if you've chosen something, then at this point, the thing that you want is to find an audience that will perceive the thing positively, right? So this is not necessarily only a software engineering thing, but I'm talking about this in the sense of software engineering. So um what so like for instance, writing code. If you just want to write code, then you need to find an audience that will allow you to just write code. So say in the job seeking sense, a job searching sense, the audience is an employer that will just say, hey, I will just hand you a bunch of requirements and you just crank out code, right? And so now you can really focus on the audience of finding an employer that will let you crank out code. Say like for DevRel, maybe you want to, let me not talk about DevRel because I don't understand the business that much, or the role that much. But let's say like just managing a team, maybe being a team lead. Like now you want to find employers that will make you a team lead, right? And so you just pick I don't want to say pick a niche, because a niche in this context is a little bit loaded, but just pick something that you want to do, and then you find an audience for that, or you may even have to create the audience. But the point is, once you have a thing, you create an audience for it, and you create an audience that has a positive value for a thing, because you can create a negative perception of it, right? But right. So I have a fourth thing, is how do you create value? So in my thought process, initially I was just like, I don't know, right? I don't know. This is kind of reasons why I want to have this conversation. But I mean, over the course of even just making this video, just talking about it, like if value, at least in my idea, if value is you have a thing and you have somebody perceiving a thing, then just creating value is taking those two things, taking those two components, and just trying to make it positive and trying to make that connection positive, right? And it's just understanding those two things makes it significantly easier for you to kind of understand how to create value, right? So I would say I would probably my entire explanation is, or at least so far my explanation is kind of like how you would create value. But I think the most important thing is obviously it depends on the audience. I mean, I've been talking about this entire time. It depends on your audience. It depends on the people who would see the thing that you want to create value in positively, right? And so it's either you find people who view the thing that you're pushing as positive, or you change the perception of the thing to be positive. Those are your two options, right? But I would say that's how you would create value. And then there's one other topic that I want to talk about, which is value as related to impact, right? So I had this conversation before. I had it on my stream before, where I was talking about what is impact. And a little bit of backstory is, to be honest with you, I really didn't have a good idea what impact is. This was my attempt of trying to figure out the things that I would need to do to be a senior engineer, to be a senior software engineer. One of the conclusions I had come up with is that senior software engineers have um, a lot of business impact, right? But what is impact, right? And so I tried my best to kind of wrap my mind around what impact is. You know what I mean? Like how do you quantify it? You know, for people who write resume for people who've had to write resumes and have gotten the advice of, you write your resume to show your impact, right? It can be a little difficult because how do you do that? What is impact? Like, you don't have like a very specific guide as what impact is. Anyways, for the most part, like, I tried a few ways of kind of wrapping my head around it. Like, I'm very visual. I like imagery, so my thought process was initially was your impact would be if you could view your impact, you know, like on a very large, like the ease of viewing your impact would equates to what your impact is, like how large your impact is. But it doesn't necessarily tell you what impact is, right? Um, Thinking of it in terms of as related to value, I think I've come up with at least something, to start with to kind of view how impact is, what impact is, sorry. And what I have, and I literally have it written down here, is impact is how valuable your actions were to a group. And I think it's really important to say a group as opposed to an organization, because like your audience is also fluid, right? The people who are listening to you changes, can change, probably will change, so I think it's more important to have that statement not be like to the organization, because if you don't belong to an organization, can you have impact? And I would say absolutely. And the example that I would give is, say you're a software engineer and you want to have impact to the software engineering community, like that is still a group, and your impact would be how valuable your actions were to the software engineering community. You know what I mean? And so I just wanted to keep it I wanted to say, group as in like it's not a specific thing, it's just a grouping of people, right? But I think this is a really good way of viewing what impact is, you know, where like and then you could do like specifically for business impact, the statement would be business impact is how valuable your actions were to the organization, right? So I say all of this to say that I think it's really important to understand your value, you know, and to understand it in that lens, in the lens of value, that word, right? Um, and I think because value is fluid, you can make yourself valuable in multiple ways. You know, the tried and true way is as a producer, as a factory of code, right? As a person who produces code that is useful, right? Like who in essence like there's people who you can just hand them business requirements and they will pump code out and that's what they want to do, you know. And then you have people who want to engage with the user base and come up with those business requirements. And then you have people who who I'm trying to think of like for those business requirements, they're like okay, like for instance for front end, um, as a UI UX designer, is like how can I fulfill these business requirements and then get people to so I'm not necessarily doing a good job of talking about this, but the point is that if you're viewing things through the lens of value and value is fluid, all of a sudden, and by the way, I'm not saying that it is, I'm not stating it as a fact. This is kind of like my observations. But if that is the case, then like what you present as valuable is also fluid, and it gives you a lot of options, you know what I mean? It's like I can make this valuable, I just need to find an audience. I can make this valuable, I just need to find an audience, you know. So all of that to say is it's really important to understand what your value is, and I mean to kind of make it to stay say things that people will probably recognize. I'm pretty sure people would recognize the statement, the value proposition. And so I would say be very aware about what your value proposition is and be very deliberate about not necessarily even sticking to that, but doing things that engage with that value proposition so that you grow in that value proposition. You know what I mean? That doesn't necessarily mean that you stick to it, but always be aware of what you want people to see you as. Or I don't want to say that, but be aware of what you want to give out to the world, you know. And like I said, you may just want to give out code. You may want to give out like whole software products. You may want to give out the ability to manage software projects, you know. But understanding what you want to give is really important. And I think that's where you kind of grow as an engineer, because you have like a base to be like, this is what I deliver. And then it's just a matter of finding people who find that valuable. And then even then, say you have like something that you want people to see as valuable and you're having a hard time doing that, and then and in essence you end up recognizing an audience that values something that you don't deliver but you're interested in delivering, you can pivot, you know. Anyways, I just felt like that was like a really important thing. I don't hear people talk about value, adding value, at least not using that phrasing. You know, like people talk about it in other ways, in software engineering, I should say. I should always kind of say that. But in software engineering, I don't see people talking about that in terms of like directly. Like they always talk about it as like, oh, you should learn this language, you know, because this language is valuable, or they don't necessarily talk about it in literally with the statement adding value, because I feel like that is a much more open way of kind of viewing how to add value, uh, using a using the phrase to describe the phrase. But I think it's easier to think about too, and it's just easier. It allows you to be more creative with how you engage with the community. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. That's kind of all I wanted to talk about. Like, I hope this video was helpful. I actually really want to continue this discussion. Like I said, this is a fairly new topic to me. It's a fairly new mindset to have. I'm trying to engage with it a little bit more. I would definitely appreciate feedback. So if you're interested, please leave a comment down below. Um, if you can hit me up on Twitter and we can have more of a discussion on it. If you're interested in talking about this more, please just approach me. I have no problem talking more about it. Also, if this has been a mindset you've had, like specifically like adding value, that statement, and you've been on this journey for some time, please also talk about it in the comments. Again, hit me up on Twitter. I would love to hear more about how you kind of engaged with this mindset, you know. But yeah, I hope this video was helpful. You know, Thank you very much for watching, and you have a good one. As my mouse doesn't move. There you go. Later.